Picture this. Tomorrow morning you wake up, make your coffee, and for the first time in years, you don't turn on the news. No headlines scrolling across the screen. No anchors warning about disasters. No constant noise. At first, it feels strange, almost like you're missing out on something important. But then, something interesting starts to happen. Your heart doesn't race the way it usually does. You notice the quiet. The morning feels lighter. And after a few days of this, you realize something has shifted. You're calmer. You sleep better. Conversations with family don't spiral into arguments about politics or problems you can't control. Most people think watching the news keeps them informed. But after 70, it often does more harm than good, raising stress, lowering mood, and stealing peace of mind. And here's the surprising part. The moment you step away, your body and brain begin to thank you in ways you never expected. So what exactly happens when you stop watching the news at this stage of life? Stick with me, because the effects are bigger and more life-changing than most people realize. Why does this matter after 70? At first glance, watching the news feels harmless. It's just information, right? A way to stay up to date, to know what's happening in the world. But after 70, the effects of constant news exposure hit harder than most people realize. Here's why. Our brains don't process stress the same way they did at 30 or 40. As we age, the parts of the brain that regulate emotion, especially the amygdala, become more sensitive to negativity. That means the endless cycle of bad news doesn't just inform you, it overwhelms you. And news outlets know this. They're not designed to keep you balanced, they're designed to keep you watching. Fear, conflict, and outrage are the tools they use to capture attention. For seniors, who may already face health worries or loneliness, this constant negativity becomes a steady drip of stress that seeps into daily life. Think about it. How do you feel after half an hour of evening news? Calm, inspired, hopeful, or tense, frustrated, and maybe even a little hopeless? That emotional toll matters more than most people think, because chronic stress doesn't just affect your mind. It starts to wear down your body too. And that's where the real cost shows up. In your blood pressure, in your sleep, in your energy. Which raises the big question. What happens when you remove that stress from your life entirely? The hidden cost of news on the brain. The human brain was never built to handle a 24-hour news cycle, especially after 70, when resilience to stress begins to decline. Every headline, every breaking story, every dramatic sound effect is designed to grab your attention, and your nervous system reacts as if you're in danger, even when you're just sitting safely at home. Each time you watch, your body releases cortisol, the stress hormone. In small doses, cortisol is useful, but when it's dripping into your system daily, it chips away at your mental sharpness. Seniors who watch hours of news often report racing thoughts, constant worry, and difficulty focusing on simple tasks. Over time, this has a measurable effect on the brain. High stress levels can shrink the hippocampus, the part responsible for memory, and make it harder to absorb new information. That means the very thing you watch to stay informed may actually make it harder to remember, think clearly, and stay present. And it doesn't stop there. The constant negativity rewires your thinking patterns. You begin to expect bad news, assume the worst, and carry a subtle weight of anxiety into every conversation. It can make the world feel more dangerous than it really is. The result? You don't just know what's happening in the world, you feel like you're living inside it. And that's exhausting. So what happens when you cut off this constant flood of stress signals? The brain begins to reset in ways you might not believe possible. How stress from news hurts the body. When you watch the news, your brain doesn't just think about the stories, it feels them. And those feelings travel straight into your body. Each time a negative headline flashes across the screen, your body responds as if there's an emergency. Your heart rate picks up, blood pressure rises, muscles tighten. It's the same fight-or-flight reaction our ancestors needed to survive, except now, instead of running from danger, you're just sitting in your living room. The trouble is, When this happens day after day, the stress becomes chronic. Cortisol levels stay high, which can weaken your immune system and increase inflammation throughout the body. For seniors, this raises the risk of serious health issues, heart disease, diabetes, and even memory decline. And then there's sleep. Many people turn on the evening news as part of their nightly routine, but the images and emotions don't fade when the television turns off. They linger, making it harder to fall asleep and stay asleep. Poor sleep, in turn, affects mood, balance, and energy the next day. So while the news may seem like just television, it actually acts like a daily dose of stress medicine you never asked for. And it's silently working against your health. But here's the hopeful part. The moment you step away, your body begins to recover. Within days, you can feel the difference. And within weeks, the transformation becomes undeniable. What happens in the first week without news? So what actually changes when you turn off the news? The first week is when most people notice the biggest shift. At first, you might feel restless, like you're missing out on something important. That's normal. The brain has been trained to expect constant updates, almost like an addiction. But then, the benefits start to appear. By the second or third evening, your body feels calmer. Without the nightly flood of negative images, your heart rate stays steadier, your breathing slows, and bedtime feels lighter. Many people report falling asleep faster and waking up without that heavy cloud of worry they didn't even realize was there. During the day, you'll likely notice your mood lift. Conversations with friends and family become easier because you're not carrying the weight of frightening headlines. Instead of saying, "Did you hear what happened?" you find yourself asking, "How are you doing?" That one shift alone can completely change the tone of your relationships. And here's something surprising. You don't actually become less informed. Instead, you realize how much of the news was repetitive noise, stories that made you anxious without adding real value. The first week proves something powerful. You don't need the news to stay connected to the world. In fact, stepping away makes you feel more connected to yourself, to your loved ones, and to the present moment. But the real transformation shows up when days turn into weeks and weeks into months. The long-term shifts, weeks to months. After a few weeks without the constant drip of headlines, the benefits begin to stack up in surprising ways. One of the first changes seniors notice is deeper, more restorative sleep. Without late-night stress keeping the mind racing, the body is able to slip into longer cycles of rest, which supports memory, balance, and overall energy. Your mood continues to improve, too. Instead of feeling weighed down by problems you can't control, you start to focus on what is in your control, your routines, your health, your relationships. Anxiety fades, and in its place comes a sense of calm that many people describe as getting my peace back. Another shift is sharper focus. When the brain isn't constantly distracted by negative headlines, it has more room to notice details, enjoy hobbies, and stay present. Seniors often rediscover activities they once loved: gardening, walking, reading, or even learning something new. And then there's the ripple effect on health. Lower stress means steadier blood pressure, fewer inflammatory flare-ups, and a stronger immune system. Small aches feel lighter, energy feels steadier. The body thrives when it isn't constantly bracing for bad news. But perhaps the most unexpected change is how relationships evolve. Freed from negativity, conversations feel warmer, less combative, more open. Families notice it, friends notice it. And you feel it every day. The longer you stay away from news, the clearer the transformation becomes, not just in your mind, but in your entire way of living. The social ripple effect. Something remarkable happens when you stop letting the news set the tone for your day. You become lighter to be around. The constant drip of negativity doesn't just affect you, it spills over into every conversation. When you remove that, people around you notice. Families often say the change is dramatic. Instead of opening with, "Did you hear about that terrible story?" conversations shift to, "What did you do today?" Or, How are you feeling? These questions strengthen bonds instead of straining them. Friendships grow warmer because you're not carrying the weight of the world into every chat. Even casual interactions improve. When your mind isn't buzzing with worry, you listen more, laugh more, and connect more easily. This matters especially after 70, when loneliness can creep in if relationships weaken. By stepping away from negativity, you actually make space for positivity, and people are naturally drawn to that. And here's the ripple effect. Stronger social ties are directly linked to better health and longer life. Research shows that seniors with active social connections live longer, recover faster from illness, and report higher happiness overall. So when you stop watching the news, it's not just your stress levels that change, it's your entire social world. You feel closer to loved ones, more connected to friends, and more open to new relationships. And all of this points to the final, most powerful gift that comes from cutting out the news: a renewed sense of peace and perspective. The gift of peace and perspective. When you finally step away from the endless stream of headlines, something unexpected happens. You rediscover peace. Without the constant reminders of everything wrong in the world, your mind has room to notice what's right in your own life. The morning sun through the window, a good conversation, the quiet joy of hobbies you'd forgotten you loved. This shift brings perspective. Problems don't vanish, but they no longer dominate your day. You realize most of the things that worried you on the screen never actually touched your life. And in that realization comes freedom. The freedom to focus on what truly matters: your health, your family, your community, and your own happiness. For many seniors, this choice becomes one of the most valuable lifestyle changes after 70. Less stress, better sleep, warmer relationships, and a calmer heart. That's the real story the news will never tell you, because peace doesn't sell, but it does heal. And here's the best part. You don't just lose something when you stop watching the news. You gain something bigger: clarity, balance, and a life that feels like your own again. If this resonated with you, hit subscribe, because in my next video, I'll share 3 powerful habits to replace the news with. Habits that don't just inform you, but make you happier and healthier every single day. Because at this stage of life, it's not about filling your mind with noise, it's about filling it with what truly matters.